The place where you have Saturn in your chart is usually going to be where you end up having the biggest issues. And this can often be remediated with shadow work. Shadow work gets a very popular rap on various different corners of the occult internet. And today we are going to be discussing shadow work and a little bit about looking to your Saturn placement for where to start. I am Dave the Amateur Magus. On this channel I talk all about the mechanics behind ceremonial magic, occultism, esotericism, and the mechanics behind everything you can find within a dusty old grimoire. If you like what I do here and you want to support the channel, link to the Patreon in the description below, where you can get exclusive access to Patreon-specific content, including early access, Patreon exclusive content, and the Occultic Manual series, which is a monthly write-up that I aim at being more advanced than what I usually have here on the channel, and less advanced than what you would find in a typical old grimoire. If that interests you, link in the Patreon description below. And if you are already supporting me on Patreon, you have my thanks for your continued and ongoing support. Saturn gets a bad reputation as being the greater malefic. Saturn is one of the planets that most people would rather not deal with. However, I'm just going to say that Saturn is not that bad, actually. Saturn is not that bad. Without Saturn, we would not have the hero's journey. And this is one of the things that Saturn is kind of understated in being a part of. The hero's journey, for those of you who don't know, is the archetypical story structure where you have an individual who is called to adventure and is forced to go out of their comfort zone and into the unknown world. The prototypical example in modern era that we can use is Lord of the Rings, where you have the characters of Frodo and Sam going from the Shire, which is their home, to destroy the One Ring. They destroy the One Ring, and then they come home, and then they live happily ever after. That's not what actually happens. Tolkien wrote a bunch of other stuff, but if you've only seen the movies, which are 12 hours long, if you watch the proper version, then you know that there's a lot going on there that I've left out. What's important for this conversation is that as the adventure goes on, Frodo and Sam, both of the two main characters in one of the plot lines, there's a lot of moving parts in the story, but Sam and Frodo have to go to Mount Mordor and destroy the One Ring of Power. Now, the One Ring of Power is an incredibly Saturnian item, and one of the things it does is both invisibility, and the other one is corruption. And over time, we see two different paths that the main characters have to go through. We have Frodo, who has to carry the One Ring, and he has to bring it to the Mount Mordor in order to destroy it, which is his journey. But then you also have Sam, who has to protect him and has to be there with him the entire time. Because as time goes on, Sam and Frodo's journey are very different. Sam's journey is that of becoming the hero of the story and making it so that the quest can be fulfilled. Frodo is slowly but surely being eaten away. His willpower is being destroyed over time, and he is slowly becoming and slowly but surely falling under the influence of the tainted, corrupting influence of this ring. And this mirrors the differences that people are going to have when they interact with the call to adventure and Saturnian influence as a whole. This is because the Saturnian influence is going to affect everyone differently. Now, let's take a moment and just analyze this really quickly. There is 12 zodiac signs. If we just assume that Saturn functions only differently based on these 12 zodiac signs, well, there's 12 different expressions of Saturn. Well, each of those different 12 zodiac signs has 3 decans in it. So, okay, maybe there's 36. Well, if we go even further, there are 10 degrees in each of those decans. That makes 360 degrees. Okay, so there's 360. But what if Saturn is retrograde? Well, then that means, without the influence of any other planetary powers, there are 720 possible different unique expressions of Saturn without taking into account how other planetary powers are going to affect the planetary power itself. And this goes on. There's an incredibly strong amount of different interpretations of Saturn. This is just caring about the signs end the chart. This doesn't care about the houses. The houses expand this by 12 minimum. So when we go through, there is a lot of different ways that Saturn can affect you. However, the ways that you're going to primarily look at Saturn, and you should look at Saturn and figure out where it is in your chart and how it affects you, because what it's going to do is Saturn is going to be your stumbling blocks. It is going to be the parts where you have the most issues. It is going to be the parts where you have to sit down and really come to terms with what is going on in your natal chart at these particular placements. Now, where it is said to be best to have Saturn in your natal chart is going to be Libra, as Saturn is exalted in Libra. Now, Saturn being exalted in Libra is going to be the Romeo and Juliet love story. This is going to be the star-crossed lovers who are doomed to be separated apart, usually through terrible means. This is because, according to Saturn, it is better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. Yes, it is said that by succumbing and dealing with these incredibly specific and hard relationships, you come to appreciate love and relationships more than somebody who didn't. Now, we all can't be lucky, as Saturn takes about 3 years to go through a sign, and when Saturn is going through a sign, you're going to have whatever that Saturn placement is. Now, you're also going to have the influence of the Saturnian, the houses. So if Saturn is, say, in your 7th house, it kind of takes on double duty as being in whatever sign it's in and in your 7th house. So it kind of is a pseudo Libra placement. It's kind of a pseudo Saturn Libra placement. Now, if Saturn is in exaltation in Libra, which is the sign of other people and relationships, it's also the sign of the law, it is said to be in detriment and in fall in the sign of Aries, which is kind of funny because Saturn is in fall in a martial sign. It is in fall in Aries, but Mars is in exaltation in a Saturnian sign, so that's kind of an interesting interplay there. But the reason why Saturn is in fall in Aries is because it is a pain in the ass for people who have Saturn in Aries to start things. Now, I have Saturn in Aries, and I have 2 modes. I am finishing a project in one burst, and I am working on that project to its conclusion, or I come back to it months, if not years later, and then actually fully realize the project to the best of its ability. There is more to this than just that. Saturn in Aries also leads to not wanting to be confrontational or not wanting to be the aggressor in any situation. It's really the I don't want to be direct approach to most, if not anything. There's a lot more to it than that, but it really is the problem of you need to struggle in order to know where to begin things and what you're going to do. You need to figure out what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and usually it causes people to have a delay in their starting. However, when you take projects seriously and when you take starting projects seriously, you end up coming to a much more interesting conclusion. You end up being able to develop and start projects much more successfully than other individuals. This is kind of the logic behind startups. You learn how to start up companies fairly easily, though companies in business are Capricorn instead of Aries. The starting of them would be Aries. Now, when it comes down to the other signs, there is a lot of various different negatives and pros and cons to each of the different signs. And there is, the negative of Pisces, Saturn and Pisces, is that they do not finish anything, as seen on the 8 of Cups card. That is the one in the Rider-Waite deck where the man is walking away from the stack of cups that he has almost finished stacking up. This is the sign of walking away before things are finished, and it is the sign of not being able to live up to your dreams and aspirations. Now, when you take your dreams and aspirations seriously and seriously work hard at fulfilling them, you end up with the 9 and 10 of Cups, which is the ultimate realization of a healthy Pisces relationship, but for the most part, that's not going to happen. And this continues. Saturn in Taurus is going to keep money just out of reach. It's going to make you work for it. Saturn in Sagittarius is going to make it so you want to travel, but you're constantly burdened by responsibility or various other things, so you can't really move around like a Sagittarius placement normally would. And this brings us to shadow work. Shadow work is where you are going to either work with an entity or meditate in order to remediate and fix these by bringing them to the surface so you can deal with your problems. I have personally found that if I plan on doing shadow work, typically the issues that I'm going to be dealing with that day or that week are going to be brought to the surface, and I'm going to have to deal with them in a much more direct manner. But that's personally me. I know that a lot of other people are going to just meditate on their problems, and then when they get out of it, they come to an understanding with their issues, and they come to an understanding with that kind of thing. But for me, when I'm doing shadow work, there are a couple different ways I've done it in the past. One of which is I've used spirits and entities. At the moment, I'm currently using my Holy Guardian Angel, and I'm trying to ask them to help me with that, and that's currently what I'm working on there. But in the past, before I had access to the Holy Guardian Angel, I did something called the mirror meditation. And the mirror meditation is where you take a mirror, you put it on your altar, and you meditate on the darkness in your soul, pretty much. And you just meditate on that mirror facing you. And it's really fucking weird looking at yourself in a mirror until you basically dissociate. Because you are looking at a reflection of yourself, and you're trying to see what the issues with that reflection are. And these are, of course, evocative of you. This is what I call the mirror meditation, where you just go into the meditation trying to figure out what is the aspect of your shadow that you need to work on that is blocking you from your goals. And what is blocking you from your goals and aspirations usually is going to show up in that mirror. And the reason why you would want to do this is to know what the issues that you are having are so you can confront them and deal with them. Because if you've confronted and dealt with them, you understand that, yeah, they are part of you, but they're not a part of you that you need to have out all the time. And if you cannot control your shadow and your darkness and your shadow will control you. The final aspect I want to talk about is shadow work is not an excuse for not doing therapy. It is not a replacement for therapy. It is pretty much to supplement it if you're going to go through, because there are some things that shadow work should not be dealt with. If you are dealing with extreme trauma, you don't shadow work away your trauma. You need to deal with your trauma in a much more safe way, because if you are dealing with shadow work, you are basically taking and you are jumping into the black ocean of your soul, and you are trying to confront the weird sea creatures that live in your subconscious mind. And you're trying to figure out like how to deal with them and make it so that you are both happy in the situation that you are in. So yeah, hopefully you guys have learned something about shadow work and the various different types of Saturn placement, as well as the hero's journey. I am Dave, the Amateur Magus. Hopefully everyone is having a good day. If you're not having a good day, hope your day gets better. Take it easy. See you next time.